Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of property experts. And joining me today, I think for the second time now, is Matt Baker, who is CEO of the HMO platform. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me again.
We obviously didn't put you off the first time, so welcome back.
Back with a vengeance.
Good. And joining Matt is Sally Wang, founder and CEO of SJW UK Property Investments Limited. Sally, welcome back to you.
Nice to be here again.
Good. Well, I'm sure we've got an interesting show for you both and lots of tough questions for you. And I'm going to start off with Matt. Matt, with a co-living project, does the landlord need a licence similar to an HMO project, or would it be relatively regulation-free? And further, what are the most important features of a co-living operation as opposed to an HMO that would secure the best type of tenant?
Okay, big question. So firstly, the type of legislation that governs co-living would be the same as HMO. So co-living is essentially another word for probably a really great HMO which has tenants which form community within it.
Would you expect to see a higher level of facility, for instance?
Yes, so you can. So generally what you'd see is a great communal space which would be larger. So I think it comes down to what you call co-living. So some people would say co-living has to be a big block of 50 to 300, 500 people sharing in one large apartment style accommodation, whereas co-living can also be a 5-bed house share. So for a 5-bed house share, you wouldn't have large facilities like a gym, maybe swimming pool, etc. You'd have just really great communal space. And I think a lot of landlords, when they create these HMOs, just think that the communal space isn't that important. And they say, let's cram as many bedrooms in as possible. Yes. So what co-living can do is actually increase rent, increase the quality of tenants as well by having really great quality communal space.
Yes. I suppose the fundamental difference then, it seems to me, is when your HMO is rather more private living space as opposed to your communal living space. I mean, your home share, to me, I'd be horrified. I couldn't think of anything worse than living with lots and lots of people milling around everywhere. But I mean, some people enjoy that community sort of engagement, and that seems to be the main difference between the two. Am I correct?
I think if you imagine a student house share, I think co-living and what co-living is becoming is like taking a student house share, but where they've got they're not studying anymore, they've got it out of their system, they're not going out partying every night of the week. So in a student house share, you generally get a really good bond amongst the people. Now, let's say you're a tenant that you grew up in the north and then you've moved to, let's say, Portsmouth, for example, and you don't know anybody. What you want to do is move into a house share which is affordable, which is near work, which is good quality with other like-minded people, where you can start to form a network, form some bonds and that meaningful relationship, which means that you're going to like where you live. You're probably going to stay there a lot longer. So from an investment perspective, it makes a lot of sense to create these types of properties rather than just what I would call a beige box HMO, which is very similar to others on the market.
I know we discussed in a different programme, Matt, the length of average time for a tenant. Would that be longer in a sort of community space as opposed to an HMO?
Yes, I definitely would say so. And there's evidence to say that tenants are staying over 18 months in good quality co-living HMOs.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I asked that question is I'm just wondering what, from a landlord's point of view, what the difference in workload would be between an HMO and a sort of co-living space. It sounds like a co-living space might be a lot easier to manage, actually.
Oh, massively. It massively reduces those management challenges, because if people like the people they're living with, they're going to resolve issues amongst themselves. They're not going to come to you crying for things like, well, who stole my cheese, etc. They're also going to stay a lot longer, so that tenant turnover, that tenant churn is a lot less.
Yes.
So, and that's the most expensive bit of being a landlord to a co-living HMO or any type of HMO, is when tenants move out, because you're probably going to spend some money on giving it a lick of paint, cleaning it. You're probably going to have maybe a few days void in between, even a few weeks void. If it's that beige box, then tenants have got a choice. And it comes back to the commoditization of HMOs. And if you create something as an investor that looks the same as everybody else's, then the only point of difference is price. So people will come to your house and they'll tell you, I'm going to go compare the market. I'm going to go out there and find a good option. Whereas if you have one of the better looking properties in town, which has the co-living element to it, it's got larger spaces where people can work, where they can sit and chill out. They've got a really large, amazing kitchen that they can cook in, and they've got a really nice private space as well, probably with an ensuite. Then they're going to be climbing over themselves to get that room, because we would get, if you get that type of property, 10, 15 applications for a room. So they need to act quite quickly to get it, and they will pay a premium rent for it, which is still highly affordable when you compare it to, for example, renting a flat. So they can actually save quite a lot of money by living in this type of accommodation as well.
I think the real key thing there, you've said it, is that in that kind of environment, people will tend to solve their own problems.
Yeah.
That's good. Sally, do you have any of your international clients investing in these sort of co-living areas or sophisticated HMO properties, or are they mainly on a simple buy-to-let basis?
Currently, they're mainly on a simple buy-to-let basis, because with HMO, involves a lot of people. Our overseas landlord are most likely hands-off, and then they can't really visit the property, and they do not want to hear, a lot of problems or anything. And also the license, tenants changing. They want to rent the property on one contract, and they know it's not many people in there. And they also have an idea in the back of their head. They probably will come one day to London and live in that property themselves. So you got to have all this combination of criteria.
It's a different aspiration, isn't it?
Yeah,
Totally. Okay, right. Sally, your first question. For a long time, the Chinese and especially Hong Kong purchasers have supported strongly the UK property market, particularly in London. Do the panel think that the current sensitivities between China and Russia and the UK will diminish this welcome international investment?
It's a very big topic, very sensitive, political. Yes. I know property industries are heavily impacted by politics, but in the line of work that I do, I try not to think about it too much. So I just, bow my hands down, get my job done, make every single of my clients happy. I don't think you should be worried about this, because, that's only what you just mentioned. That's only one aspect of the politics. There are many other aspects as well. There's things happening in China, there's things happening in Hong Kong, there's things happening between UK, China, UK, America. It's a very complicated thing. So I don't want to go, into details, but you will still have Chinese coming. You will still have Hong Kong people coming. And there's loads of Hong Kong people coming because we are not ready last year, and then they're still coming. So I wouldn't worry about it, as long as, I don't know, but this just becomes, as long as we don't go backwards, and then every country become isolated and mind their own business. As long as the international gates are still open, people still cherish international trading. There's communication.
Has the relaxation of the visa regime in Hong Kong helped at all?
Okay, Hong Kong now I believe is 3+7 or something. Mainland China now is 7+3, so 7 days and +3. It's kind of loosened up a bit. And I think it was last week, there's a first direct flight between UK and China. They actually start to functioning. It's very expensive, but at least there's a direct flight that they're flying. So hopefully there'll be something. We will go back to our normal life. Well, I haven't been to China since my parents for 2.5 years now. So hopefully next year it will happen, but who knows, right?
Okay,
we're going to stay positive.
Good. So looks like our property market in London is safe for the time being.
As long as there's no war. I think property. Well, during this COVID, what we see in Chinese, we have a saying: 衣食住行, the 4 basic elements of life: clothing, food, accommodation, and transportation. During this COVID, we see closing, a lot of online shops, it's don't get damaged. Restaurants, the closing, a lot of restaurant owners, they suffer. Transportation, there's no international flights, like we've seen BAE, it's only accommodation, only property are still functioning. So, I do believe in property, not only because I love seeing property. I mean, like show apartments, a lot of people want to see it for 10 times, they don't want to see it. Or same show apartment, I went there to see 100 times. Every time I can see new things in that one bedroom show apartment, I just naturally love a property. So, and I do believe a property is safe as long as there's peace. There's world peace, then this will be okay.
I think the question I'd like to ask you both really for your view is, do you think since Brexit there has been any international resistance to investing in the UK?
I haven't seen much to put that forward. I think what we've actually seen is a few things come in tandem which have caused property market to do something which I don't think we expected to really boom. So we had Brexit and people were saying doom and gloom things at that point. And then we've had the pandemic and again, doom and gloom at that point. And every turn, the property market has just gone strength to strength. And I think people underestimate the power of the UK market. I think it's I've said it before, it's one of the best places in the world to invest. UK residential property is one of the best asset classes in the world, which is why you have all the investors coming overseas. So I didn't really see any change from Brexit. In fact, it's probably encouraging people because it's a bit more out of reach. So I want to invest in the UK because it's just got an amazing history to it as well.
And it's safe.
It's safe.
Yeah. Sally, give me your 30 seconds on this.
Okay, I think, Stephen, what will be interesting is that, we are small business owners. In the UK, I just read a report, if your company have over 250 employees, you can be classified as a big company. We're a small company. I'm a small company, not the size of your firm. And I feel the same. I feel like my business doubled in 2020. 2020, my business stayed the same as 2019. 2021, our business doubled. This year, we kind of on that trend as well. But it will be very interesting if you can find us an expert in the national macro level of statistics, and we can sit down and talk to them, because we only represent the micro, the small. We are frontline dealing with the clients directly. But maybe because we are so good at running our companies, we didn't see the negative side of the thing. But I'm very interested to see the real national statistics show what's the real market is like. That would be interesting, and talk to that person, and we can share our opinion. That is
okay. All right. Well, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break. Hello and welcome back to Property Question Time Part 2 with Matt Baker and Sally Wang. Welcome back, guys. Matt, your second question. I have a small portfolio of HMO properties and I'm planning my next investment. I read a lot about co-living in the property press, but I'm struggling to differentiate between HMO and co-living investments. Can the panel give their opinion on the pros and cons of these investment platforms, please? I know we discussed this sort of loosely in the earlier question, but I think it's very specific, and I'm guessing here that they're looking at the management aspects of the two to be compared, and probably the cost of investment too.
I think the first thing we need to do is look at what an HMO actually is. So an HMO is a house of multiple occupation where we have 3 or more unconnected people from 2 or more households sharing a property. Now, that is a technical definition from government.
Yeah.
So HMO as a term is people sharing in a house. Now, what you then choose to go and do with that type of investment is up to you. And there are many different types of HMOs. Co-living is just one type of HMO. You've also got social housing, supported living. You've got Monday to Friday workers. You've got blue collar workers, white collar work. You've got all sorts of different people that could live in shared accommodation. So, what is co-living then? Well, co-living is just another form of shared living. Now, what I'll describe the way I would describe it is the HMO is the bricks and mortar. It's the house itself which the people will live in. Co-living is then the wrapper that goes around it. It's the kind of the aura, the ethos of people forming a community within it. So you could go and create an amazing looking property, which I've seen them all the time on social media and people shouting about this amazing HMO they've just created. Now, unless that property is managed well and it's got great communal space and the people within it start to form a community, it's not a co-living property. So co-living itself, you can't just create it. It is created through the creation of what I would say great quality space, design, and then the service that comes along with it. Now, when we look at the different types of investment that you put into it, now for a standard HMO, which I refer to as the beige box, that's where you probably have, magnolia walls or even just white walls and a grey feature wall. That's very commonplace. You're not standing out from the crowd. So to create a property that stands out of the crowd, you need to create your own identity, your own brand for that property. Think of like a Mac versus PC. There are hundreds of different types of PC, but there's only one Mac. So they've created their brand that stands out. So that's what co-living can be. And then when you create it, it's about that communal space, as I mentioned earlier, about where you've got a great space to cook. We generally don't put kitchens in rooms. We survey tenants and they don't necessarily like to have their own cooking facilities. It's quite smelly, it's fire risk. So, and they much prefer to have a better kitchen where they can cook properly. And even if they're going to use the microwave, it's very easy to do. So you've got a great kitchen. You've got somewhere where they can all sit and eat together. So we don't scrimp on the dining space. And also we want a space where they can all sit and chill out together as well. So if you've got 7 or 8 people sharing a co-living HMO, they need to be able to use those facilities as a unit, because if you don't create it, they're not going to use it. And if they don't have that communal space, they're not going to be as inclined to talk to each other. They're not going to be inclined to resolve those issues amongst themselves and reduce the management hassles, which we believe is better through co-living. So you don't have as much management hassles through doing that type of property.
Okay. Well, one question for you there. So in a co-living situation where you have all these lovely people living together and sharing everything, how do you deal with disagreements?
I think in the same way that you deal with any disagreement. First
well,
and foremost,
usually if you've got an AST or something, it's all pretty well specified. And I mean, my sort of mantra for years in property has been, look, you both signed a lease, landlord and tenant. Why don't you just do what it says? And it's the moment you try and circumvent those clauses that the problems occur. Have you got that control in the co-living?
So we have a proactive approach to it. So what we want to do is to proactively get tenants to talk to each other. We like to call them housemates instead of tenants, really, so that they see themselves as part of living in a home, a house, rather than just being the tenant to the landlord, which I think is a bit of an outdated modality. Now, so how do you deal with conflict? First and foremost, you ask them to go and speak to the other people. If they feel unsafe for any reason, then you have to obviously have those conversations outside and speak to them individually. If someone fundamentally is unhappy living in a property, they probably need to move out. So it's just how you can facilitate that conversation to listen, but also to keep it friendly, but you're not their friend, you're not their mum, their dad, trying to resolve their issues for them.
I suppose, again, we've talked previously about the difference between a short tenancies and licenses. I suppose in your co-living, if you do have licenses, it's very much easier to, shall we say, get rid of somebody who is disruptive or...
It is, and I think a lot of the larger co-living developers, especially in London and Manchester, they use licenses quite a lot because they call it a membership, and as part of the membership to that community, you get a place to stay. Whereas if you were to translate that into smaller scale co-living, where you have a number of shared houses in a town, between 4 and 7 people sharing in a house, you'll generally find that is their main residence. And even if you put a license on it, if you were to end up in court, a judge would probably deem it to be a tenancy, an AST anyway.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because of it's their main home, they've got exclusivity over it, etc.
Yeah. Okay. And the final point on that, you referred to branding.
Yeah.
Are there? I mean, it sounds to me as with this co-living, you could almost create a brand, couldn't you? You know, have a typical communal space, a typical kitchen facility, a typical bathroom and leisure facilities, maybe even. Are there national brands for this category that have rolled this out sort of nationwide? Or?
No, not yet. I think it's a great opportunity. It's something that we are aiming to do ourselves as well, because if you develop them, you can develop them to the standard that you want, and work with other landlords that are like-minded to kind of almost like club together as another community. So community is quite important to us, and I think it brings people together. We were talking about it earlier about, you know, internationally and Brexit. You know, if we bring everyone together, life is better.
Sure.
So I think if we can do that across the UK, there is an opportunity there. But I think people at the moment, there are a few smaller brands that have got maybe 2 or 3 developments of maybe between 15 and 30 units. There's quite a few more in London. But there are a few major players that are starting to look at other markets. But a lot of it comes back down to the local demand for rooms, what that town and will take, what they're looking for.
With co-living, are you subject to the authorities sort of saying, well, we don't want any more of this in the area, the same as they do with HMOs?
Yeah, so if you're going through planning permission, so if you go for a larger HMO, so 7 people or above would require a full planning application. It's called sui generis. Yeah. And if you're going for that, you are subject to the same level of test that anyone else would go, depending on what type of accommodation or the level of quality. So, but what we have seen is when we've done that and we've ended up at planning committees or speaking to planning officers, and we're selling ourselves as the developer. And I think a good developer will always go out there and almost do a bit of a PR campaign with the council to show them that this is not your standard HMO. This is different. This is something new. And a lot of councillors are set in their ways because they see what HMOs have been in the past, like from the old school bedsit from the 70s that my parents would tell me about, they used to live in, all the way through to what some landlords are still creating now is very small rooms, quite pokey, and because in some areas there's a massive demand for rooms, so you can get away with not providing the best quality. Okay,
thank you very much for that, Matt. Sally, I know you're well placed to answer this next question because you guide international investors all over the country. So do the panel believe that the government's levelling up policy will actually increase international investment in the Midlands and Northern counties, or will the concentration remain focused on London?
I think in general, the international investors will go to Midlands or to north of the UK. However, with my company, my clients, I haven't seen the trend happening heavily just yet. I've seen my clients are happy to go explore Birmingham and Cambridge and Oxford, those areas.
Is that related for educational purposes for their children, perhaps? Or?
Investment as well, for investment, because but if we started to talk to our Asia Pacific owners, buyers about other areas like Liverpool or what about let's say Coventry or Kent? I'm just giving random names. Then the first question they will ask us is, where is it? What's so special about it? So we have to start the education about the whole area. First with London, then everybody knows London. With Cambridge, I think with the Asian Pacific investors, especially they're just starting to look at the UK as a country, because if we go one step backwards, when you talk to a Chinese buyers in China, they have different country to invest in: Australia, America, New Zealand, Canada, and UK, or maybe even Malaysia or Thailand. So when they choose, to go to UK, they want to go with the places that they are familiar with. London, they know Cambridge University, they want their kids to be able to have some association with Cambridge. Birmingham, because Birmingham University, the connection with China as well. So those I find is easier. When we go to the other areas, even when they have, let's say, much higher return, they will still hesitate about it. So I think maybe it will happen eventually if it doesn't produce a huge return, and then a lot of education marketing education being done on that area, and the regeneration and developers' reputation as well. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for the international buyers.
Yes. Do you think the levelling up of the Midlands and the North will in fact see agents encouraging their investors there, or do you think they're going to be drawn by the higher fees and ease of marketing of London? I mean, it's very. I mean, I've been in a situation where I've been in a foreign country trying to promote property. And you're right, Sally, the first question is, well, where is it? What's special about it? What's interesting about it? So you either have a very complex conversation about Birmingham or Manchester, or you go for the ease of London, where you can say, well, there's Tower Bridge, there's the Houses of Parliament. It's very much easier for an agent to sell London, isn't it?
It's not only that, and also, when it's London, everybody knows that London, you only have one London in the whole world. And the economic growth is going to be sustainable. But then we're talking about Midlands. Okay, this year, next 5 years, we got the plan. What about 10 years? What about 15 years? Will my investment going to be safe in 15 years' time? What is the sustainable plan? Can you show me the sustainable plan? And then, how are we going to answer to that? But with London, with Birmingham, we know this good university is always going to be there. Not the Crossrail, the HS2 is going to open up. So we know that city for the next 10, 15 years, we're confident. Buyers will feel confident.
But there's also a fantastic transaction history, isn't there, that you can refer to? So very good.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Well, look, thank you both very much for that. So Sally Wang, founder of SJW UK Property Investments, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Matt from HMO Platform, thank you for coming in. Great answers from both of you. I'm Stephen Galpin. I look forward to seeing you next time on Property Question Time.